Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Natasha, and today I'm going to share with you a conversation that I had with business coach Sherice Kral. Today I'm going to be talking with executive coach, business coach Sherice Kral, and we're going to talk about relational leadership. She and I both met during the John Maxwell IMC conference, and we immediately clicked, and we have been friends ever since. And I'm always very inspired by her work on social media as far as like getting different leadership concepts out, and then also with just how she is in person. Like, she's so engaging, and she's just a really phenomenal human. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation. We'll probably also talk a lot about John Maxwell.
Hey, there we go.
Hey. How are you today?
I haven't used Instagram yet, so for going live, this is a new thing for me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, there's a first for everything, and now you'll use it every day.
I love it. How have you been?
I've been really good. How have you been?
Oh, fantastic. Busy,
good.
But good.
Good. I understand. I feel like, every day is just so, not overbooked, but appropriately booked, I guess, which is good.
That's a good point.
Yes. So I just gave a quick introduction about how we met at John Maxwell's IMC, and then I wanted you to also talk about your businesses and what you do as a business coach.
Okay, yeah. So my main business, what I do, what Natasha knows the most about is that I'm a John Maxwell leadership coach, and so I do a lot of working with people on interpersonal communication and a lot of intentional conversations. So teaching them how to negotiate better, teaching them how to sell better, how to deal with conflict resolution, how to hire someone or fire someone. We actually tonight, I would do a lot of stuff on Clubhouse, and tonight we're going to be doing a talk on virtual team building activities and how you can build connection within a remote team. So things like that is what I really like to work on. I used to do a lot with corporate businesses, Fortune 500 companies, way back when I first started. But a lot of times that's where the money is, but it's not where the passion is. And I like to work with people who have passion and who want to learn. It's not just checking the box. And so I've kind of filtered down into working with individuals who want to be better leaders or better salespeople, in addition to small business owners.
And it's really interesting because I think that goes perfectly into relational leadership, right? There's these relationships that we have with ourselves, with our coworkers, and even our personal relationships at home that can bleed over into the workplace. So I think that, this whole relational leadership concept is so interesting.
Yes, and it's crazy because, you know all of this, but leadership itself, influence itself has been around since the beginning of time. It's something that human beings have always leveraged or learned how to use better or worse, and it can be used for good things and bad things, but it wasn't until 1960 when John Maxwell really started defining that leadership is influence, that people started understanding the relationship between there, or the correlation, and understanding that leadership isn't about a title or a position. It's not who you are, it's about what you do. And so it's still a fairly new concept. People don't understand it quite as well because it's only been around talked about really since 1960.
Yes, it's interesting too, because before that there was like the great man theory, and it was like a leader has like these 5 qualities, and then it was like, oh no, a leader has these 50 qualities, and they were sometimes physical qualities too, like they're tall or they're this. And I think that sometimes just as a society there are these things those things were around for hundreds of years, so people still tend to go to this thought of, no, like leadership is this like misuse of power. I don't know if I want to say it that way, but it's this aggressive authority that is very crushing to anyone who's beneath it. And
Yeah, it's absolutely not that way. Obviously, with the pyramid, you don't get to the top without all that support from the bottom, and you have to treat them well, because otherwise, if they start to leave, that pyramid's going to topple.
That's a perfect analogy, and it's so true. Power leadership is not, it's a style of leadership, but it's not something that you're going to gain a lot of influence with. So of course it's not going to get you very far. You could go pretty far with it on your own, but you're not going to be able to make anything big happen. You're not going to be able to change the world.
Yes. And I think too, it's like you said, it's a type, and it can be employed in certain situations. Like, we're both prior military, so it's really interesting that if you're under fire, there's going to be yelling. It's immediate, real danger. But in a corporate setting or in an office, or even anytime you're not physically under fire, you're not going to gain much influence that way, right? People are in fact going to be repelled.
Very true, and that's a good indication, a good point. But that's the problem with the Army specifically too, in their leadership style, is that they think that that's the only leadership style, and it should be used in every single situation, and that's just not the case. And then, as you know, you see all of these people, committing suicide, wanting to leave, going to jail, having all of these different problems that are just coming out. And another great example is the cohesion within teams, within squads, within units is not there most of the time, except for the brown-nosing, individuals.
Yes.
And that doesn't make a good team. People who work out of fear or work out of hatred are not going to, give you their best, and then your bottom line is not going to be what you want it to be.
It's interesting too, because a lot of organizations, probably not just the military, but I know we've seen it in the military, but a lot of organizations will do this, these are our espoused values, this is what we, teamwork is important and this is important, but then in actual execution, it's not that way at all. It has to be very self-driven for people to get to these different places. And I think that sometimes, even if you have good intentions when you start, being so self-driven for so long that when you are in this position where you could really make a change and impact it, you're kind of too institutionalized by that point that you don't. Right now you're just kind of playing a game, and you're just really good at this game.
That's a great point. And that just comes into play when you're talking about principles versus implementing the principles in actuality. And that's what I found to be the number one question people have, and why they don't even go and look at learning leadership development, because they automatically assume that they can't implement it because there's so few people or coaches or trainers out there that teach you how to implement it. They just like to teach off the principles and then let you go. That's why I like John Maxwell so much, is because he'll actually give you real life scenarios. He'll give you the principles in a very simple method, but then he'll teach the story part of it too.
Yes, and he does it with quotes, with stories, both his and other people's. And I think when you can bring that together and you can find what resonates with someone, because I'm sure you've experienced this too, where you're someone's telling a story and you're like, why? What is, please, this is crazy. And then at the end you're like, I just want my life back, right? I don't, this did not help anything.
I just wasted a few moments of my time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know in your intro you had also said, with sales and negotiating, I think people, they put this stigma on things, so the relationship that they have with themselves doing certain things, because they put this stigma on it, is such a challenge. So what are your thoughts on that?
You're saying how people act a certain way or act differently as soon as they get into a different position. Mm-hmm. Whatever they're acting, they're expecting that this is what they're supposed to do, and so that's what they fall into line with. I think that when somebody doesn't understand the position well enough, they'll do it because that's what they fall onto instead of falling on experience. Mm-hmm. And so if you were great salesmen, and great as in great relationship sales, not that used car salesman pushy tactics, but if you're a great salesman and you come into a new job but it's still sales, you're not going to fall into this automated sales process that you know everybody tends to do but doesn't work very well, you're going to fall back on your experience. And so I think that it's just people who are naive in a position are the ones that tend to do that, or if they don't have a lot of self-confidence, which is ultimately why they're falling into these acting methods if they don't have experience. It's just because they don't have confidence in it.
That's a great point, because I think also even when you kind of like get to the end of an experience or the end of your experience, and even though it was maybe different than what's kind of stereotypical, it's really interesting to see how people will then kind of fall back and they kind of get into this mindset like, oh, it doesn't work. Like, you know, well, being authentic, that doesn't work. You got to go back and be this way. But I like that you said it can be a confidence issue too.
And if you try something and you don't try it the right way, if you don't have the right mentor when you first start trying it, or if you don't try it for long enough, you're never going to see success, because anything where you're trying to change and grow takes time. And you know, there's these 12 different principles or 12 different laws of your personal growth, and these different things you have to go through to be successful in a new field. And if you don't, for example, go through the pain of growth, then obviously a lot of people stop at that one, right? They start feeling the pain or the sacrifice of growing into this new thing or trying this new thing, and they don't like it, and so they instantly go back to their comfort zone, and then they say it didn't work. John Maxwell calls it taking a break or taking time to let it resonate with you new, but I like to call it marinate.
Yes.
So if you don't let that growth marinate within you and take that break and that time to let it grow and catch up, then of course you're not going to see success. And so then you're going to say it doesn't work. I mean, you see this in any type of field. So it's not just a leadership thing. You're going to see it with somebody who tries to work on a Black Hawk helicopter for the first time, you know, or even tries to use the new Clubhouse app or tries to figure out Excel spreadsheet or something. You know, it's literally in anything you can see these steps, and absolutely everybody can take that opportunity to go back to their comfort zone and use an excuse of that didn't work if they don't want to go through all of the steps of growth.
Podcaster, and he does other things. I think he's also a coach. Justin Sua, on his podcast, Increase Your Impact, he talks about how a little by little, a little becomes a lot. And I don't know if he originally said that or who originally said it, but I heard him say it. And I think that's kind of that piece there too, where, yeah, every day you're really trying and you're really trying to engage in a certain way. And then over time, it does just become natural, right? Then you are like, I'll just use sales as an example, like you're really trying to add value to someone else. Like you have this product or this service that you know could change their life or impact them in a positive way. And coming at it from that perspective versus like this bottom line type perspective really does change, you know, like your relationship with how you engage with them.
That's a great point. And I think any expert or every expert has said that sentence in some form. A little bit of consistency goes a long way to success, or that's what brings success. There's so many different people that say a different version of it, but that's because it's true. And so if you're starting to follow these people, if you're starting to grow, or if you're at the very beginning of your personal development, and you start noticing that everybody is saying something, even if it is in a different format, it's probably a good time to take note, because that is a real big hitter if they're all talking about it. So, for example, so I have a second business. I've kind of merged it into my first one just because of some personal things in my life. Like, I'll be honest, the Army ruined my body, and so I have to get hip replacements, and they're going to be coming up this year. And so until then, I've taken a little bit of load off of me and merged my two businesses temporarily. Good, yeah. But that business is taking coaches or people that want to become coaches and teaching them how to build a successful foundational business online, because so many people out there right now, especially the Facebookpreneurs, they don't know how to do that, and they're getting all of this bad information from other people who never learned how to do it correctly. And so then they're creating these businesses that are not sustainable and that aren't great. And so, for example, when I coach somebody to teach them how to build their business correctly as a coach, then I'm showing them these steps that they have to take and these daily action steps. Even if you worked on your business intentionally and very directly for 1 hour a day, and you did that for 3 months, you would be a lot further along than somebody who just tried to powerhouse for a week and then stopped. And then I see all of these people who don't get into my coaching, or other people that I know that do a great job building businesses, and they try to build their business for 5 months or 2 months or even 1 month I've seen, and then they give up, or they're overwhelmed, or they're stressed out, and they're like, this isn't working, nothing's working. Yeah, because you're listening to all the fad marketing that lies to you about, you know, being able to make 10K in 1 month, which is not possible if you don't have an audience, if you're starting from scratch, you know? And it's all because they're trying to do this get rich quick thing. They're trying to just throw everything into it at once very quickly and then see success, when success is made with small steps over a long period of time. Average time frame to build a business is, a traditional brick and mortar business is 3 to 5 years. Online business, it's 1 year. And so if you aren't struggling and, you know, not making money, putting money out for a year straight, and maybe not being consistent, you know, officially for a year straight, that's normal. There are ways around it, but you usually need a decent amount of money to begin with to get around that. And so that's what takes time. And if you aren't willing to put in that sacrifice and that pain to grow your business, right, the law of growth, if you aren't willing to do that, you're not going to see success. So.
It's interesting too, because a friend of mine, I said, you know, I want to try to work more in the social media space just to get different, just little pieces of leadership stuff out there and coaching, just to kind of build that brand and build that presence. And he said that for the first year, so he does a lot of stuff on YouTube, and for the first year, he said he had like 100 followers, and you know, it fluctuates, right? There's 105, now there's 98 or whatever, but it fluctuated, and he was posting like 2 videos a day, every single day, and just like pushing it out. And it wasn't, he said maybe at the 2.5 year mark, that's when all of a sudden it just like, it hit hard. But then he also had this bench of so much content, so when people did find him, then they came and they stayed. But exactly, it takes that time and that consistency. If people know you're going to post a podcast or a video or a blog or whatever it is that you're putting out, it's just that, that consistent schedule. But finding that consistent schedule for you is also really important, because when life happens, we still want to remain consistent. So what are your thoughts around how people can work on that?
So when you want to be consistent, you have to learn how to motivate yourself. And motivation, as we all know, it's a byproduct of action. It's an emotion. It's something that comes after or as a result of doing something, which is tough, right? Because you don't want to do anything until you get that feeling, but you don't want to, or you can't get that feeling until you do something. So it's kind of a difficult circle.
It's like the chicken and egg thing, right? Like, it's like, what came first? Yeah.
It's crazy, but John actually talks about something that's really cool that I have implemented in my life and I have learned. And even like, I have depression, I have a lot of issues. So for me, it is tough to be consistent, maybe more so than somebody else, less than other people, I'm sure. But John Maxwell talks about setting up refueling stations within your area. And so if you need motivation while you're working, set up these refueling stations where you're working in your location. Have a list of things that really inspire you and motivate you and get you into that zone, right? So a lot of us have songs that just really get us hyped up. And gym owners or personal trainers use this all the time, right? This is a really well-known refueling station to get this excitement going and get your blood pumping with music. So get a thinking list made, put it on Spotify or whatever, and start playing it in the morning when you first get to your office or something like that. If you need to build up some motivation, if you start feeling yourself crashing in the day, take 5 minutes or 10 minutes and listen to that music. Set up another refueling station. John says he has a list of books that really inspire him. And so for 20 minutes when he has a break in between meetings, he'll go grab a book off the shelf. He makes sure that it's like readily accessible, is right there for him to grab, and he reads a book. Another thing you can do is YouTube videos. A lot of people get inspired by Tony Robbins or Mel or all of these different amazing people. And you can have a playlist of motivational YouTube videos, or TikTok even, if you have a couple people you follow on TikTok. I'm trying to make this a little bit more relevant to today, but there's literally everything. There's quotes, there's movies, there's books, there's music, there's even food. You can even get motivated by food, some people do. But there's a huge list of them that you can just go around and say, what makes me feel good? What makes me feel like I can conquer the world today? And then make sure you write those down and keep a list of those, and then put those into your space that you need to stay motivated in, and then touch base on each of those throughout the day so that you can stay in the right mindset. Sometimes that's people, like conversations with certain people. That's another really good one that I like to use. But that's one way to get motivated and stay motivated consistently. And we all know that leading ourselves is the most difficult thing we can do.
Yes.
And this is one of the biggest things that you can do to lead yourself. It's one of the most important things you can do to lead yourself. And so if you can learn how to do this well, then you can make sure that each day accomplishes what you need to do. And as we know, then it starts bringing that consistency. But just focus on one day at a time.
It's interesting too, because I love also that list that you gave, because sometimes people, and I've been guilty of this too, where you're like, oh, I don't have the time for that. But some of your suggestions, a TikTok video is 15 seconds long. Like, you got time. Like, you can make that time if that's what fuels you. But also it's interesting how people will sacrifice the relationship with themselves and not lead themselves and go outward and try to help other people. And I think for a long time people are like, oh, that's so noble, that's so great, when really it's people kind of depleting themselves and then trying to pour from an empty cup, and then they're pissed off and they're like, okay, this is miserable, and then they're resentful against everyone else. And then in an organization that can be negative, because then that person resents the organization, and so it's this kind of interesting way that people will interact, that it's like, no, like, self-care is not selfish. I know I'm not the first person who's ever said that, but it's also important to be like, these things that you need to do to lead yourself, I love how you said that, is what's making you show up as your best self to all these different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why John calls them refueling stations, I think. And that's what I love about it, is that we like to say, and this is because I came from the financial, teaching yourself financial principles and stuff. I used to do that for a job right before I got into leadership. Mm-hmm. That's actually kind of what got me into leadership. But when I was transitioning over, I started taking some financial quotes and comments and words, some of the verbiage, and using it for my leadership talks. And one of the things I like to say is that pretend that yourself is a bank account. And you have to deposit into that bank account before you can withdraw from the bank account. And if you keep trying to withdraw and giving to other people and giving and giving and giving, you're going to go negative, and then you're going to get these, whatever, $30 negative charges or whatever they're called, and like, you're going to keep going in the hole, right, until your bank account closes. So essentially till you get overwhelmed and you crash, or you have an anxiety attack, or whatever it is that happens, it's going to be bad. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure you're depositing first. And we as a culture are never taught to do that. Europe is a lot better about it, but still as a culture across the world, we need to get better at it. And it's because of I think, and I'm a religious person, so I'm not saying this negatively, but I think it's because of the traditional old Christianity rules and regulations of that religion taught that you were not supposed to, it wasn't okay to do anything for yourself. You weren't supposed to look nice. You weren't supposed to dance. You weren't supposed to do anything for yourself. And you were only supposed to serve others. Mm-hmm. But even monks, they are putting into themselves all the time through meditation, through studying, through all of these things. They are taking care of themselves better than most people on this earth, even though they don't have a lot of physical items. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so there's different ways of putting into your bank account so that you can withdraw and give to other people.
Yes, and I found even something as simple as meditation, I used to be one of those people who was very like, nah, that's way too hippie.
Yep.
But then I started doing it, and I'm like, did this change my life? Should I tell everyone about this?
I love it. I think almost every single person I can imagine goes through that with meditation. Yes. Probably yoga too, because yoga's pretty tough to deal with at first too. Mm-hmm. But you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're dealing with those laws of growth, with the pain and the sacrifice and all of this stuff. And so, of course, it's going to be tough at first. And those particular things, meditation and yoga, actually, now that I think about it, they yield results long-term, not short-term. That's why I think it's harder to get into it, because you don't see immediate positivity coming back.
Do you have anything that you want to promote or anything that you got coming up that you want people to know about?
You know what? There's a few things that are like, just wait and see. I have my podcast coming out soon, and I'm going to be launching a leadership membership that really teaches real-world leadership, a lot of implementing, like what we were talking about at the beginning of this, taking principles and teaching how to implement it in ways that anybody can learn. But that's coming out in the future. The real thing that I'm wanting to promote and push is the brand new Leadership Hub Club Room on Clubhouse. And so it's just called Leadership Hub, and you can find it on Clubhouse. We are doing every Thursday night. We do rooms. If you're a member, you can create rooms yourself. You can use it as an amazing setup to be able to get clients if you're a leadership coach or a leadership expert, because there's already a ton of people in the club. And so when you create a room in that specific club in Clubhouse, then everybody inside there gets notified that somebody went live or started a room. And those are your ideal clients. There's other people that really want to learn about leadership. And so you can do a great promotion. You can talk about something. You can do a public speaking event, a workshop, whatever. And so it's really just a place to facilitate other people being able to work in the leadership realm. But I want to get it as big as I can so that everybody else could benefit from it. So if you're on Clubhouse, go to the Leadership Hub.
Leadership Hub, and so every Thursday night.
Yep. For me, it's every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll have something going on. April 22nd, actually, we are doing the very first virtual leadership game, John Maxwell's Certified Leadership Game.
Yes.
We're going to do it as a Clubhouse event. I'll be pulling the cards for everybody and facilitating it. And usually when you play the leadership game with a certified coach, it's around $125 a person per seat. And there's 8 to 12 seats. Because this is the very first one, it's only $29 a person. But anybody and everybody can listen.
Awesome. Oh, that's fantastic. And then do you have a website, or how can people find you on the socials?
On the socials. So as you can see, I'm using 5-Step Leadership for my Instagram, and you're going to be seeing a lot of new things popping up on here as well, since we have pivoted and we're adding some new stuff in here. I'm on Facebook as well, and my big Facebook page that I love to use is called Unconventional Leaders in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's where I'm located. And then lastly, Absolutely. I do have a website. It is down for 1 week for maintenance to add in our membership material, but it's called 5stepleadership.com. 5 as in written out, not the letter or not the number. So actually written out in words, 5stepleadership.com.
Thank you for listening to the Equipping Leaders podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha or on Twitter at Natasha Cheyenne. Please join me next time for more insight and resources to equip leaders.